attitudes towards change in different cultural backgrounds. Let's see the characteristics of different cultures.
Workplace in Indian culture, hierarchy is very, very important, and people are more task oriented, the lower level management. It's better if like top managers, when they talk about a change, they have to talk good, whether good or bad, in a group, because it's perceived better than if you tell a person individually.
A very lazy culture. Italians are seen as making much noise. We are more expensive maybe than other cultures.
We are a Buddhist country, and they taught us to be satisfied with what we have. And the concept is what we call karma. What goes around come around. So whatever happens right now, it's because what you did in the past, or in the previous life, or something like that. So we don't really fight over the things that really hard to change.
Distinguishing cultures with the Hofstadter model. Hofstadter uses 5 dimensions to characterize and thus group different cultures. Hofstadter uses 5 dimensions: power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, and long-term orientation.
The first dimension is power distance. High power distance societies accept that power is distributed unequally, and low power distance societies expect more consultative power relations.
Korea is a regime which is almost paramilitary, where people are under orders. The type of management is comparable to what can occur in the army. We entered into a room, everybody was sitting. We were presenting the new financial director of the area. Everybody got up, standing guard, presenting themselves. When you arrive in the US, no one is waiting for you, you're nothing. So you're the one who has to show your competence, and even if you have power, it is in your interest to quickly hire people who share your vision of strategy and who will work for you. There is a strong correlation between the one who gives the orders and the ones who give bonuses. Everyone is dollar and result-oriented, and much less oriented towards hierarchy, influent, functional, operational. These are French subtleties which very few people understand, neither in Asia nor in the US.
The second dimension is individualism versus collectivism. Individualism values personal achievements and individual rights. Collectivism values group work and achievements.
Americans have a lot of trouble understanding why we French do a lot of meetings. They think that French do too many meetings, that they are always in meetings. As a French, I don't really notice. When we're facing complex issues, we are used to meet with those who are in charge of these issues. They are supposed to describe the issues, to put on the table a certain number of things, to make the other people react on these issues, etc. It has the power to annoy Americans who ask, why are they asking me to do all this? We already told them about the issue. It's their role to fix it. So in the US, we have more an experimental culture. I observe extremely frequently brutal decisions who are totally unjustified.
The third dimension is about masculinity and femininity. A masculine culture is more competitive, materialistic, ambitious, and more power-oriented. A feminine culture values more relationships, cooperation, humility, and quality of life.
There is a strong population of women who works at L'Oréal. On the cultural level, it's really surprising because it is not perceived well in these countries for married women to work. As a result, there are a lot of single women who are unmarried, who don't want to get married with Japanese, Korean or Chinese people, and who work in companies such as L'Oréal, LVMH, Estée Lauder. There were 70–80% of women against 20% of men in L'Oréal Japan. Japanese men who work in cosmetics in a European company are totally marginalized, whereas women are recognized for that difference. And we can really notice that there are people of quality at an intellectual, transparency and effort level.
The fourth dimension is about uncertainty avoidance. In high uncertainty avoidance societies, companies implement rules, law, and regulations to avoid uncertainties. In low uncertainty avoidance societies, companies tolerate change and are more pragmatic.
Society which are not protecting their population as much as in Europe, for example. People have nothing to lose, so they are more inclined to go ahead and to accept change.
The fifth dimension is about long-term versus short-term orientation. Long-term oriented societies develop strategies by giving more importance to the future, whereas short-term oriented societies respect traditions and value more the present than the future.
They have a very experimental culture. They invest, and if it doesn't work, they cut their costs instantly. So there is a lot more damage in the US. As a French company, L'Oréal has a different way of thinking. Management is based on meritocracy. Top-level management people stay in these positions for many years, as opposed to the American systems, which values short-term and where people stay for a few months.
Different cultures have different approaches to change. By taking into consideration aspects of different national cultures during the change implementation process, the change could be carried out more successfully. Let's look at France. The main characteristics of the French cultures are that French give a lot of importance to people's opinion, that they are really proud. They dislike change and unpredictable situations, and they like to define roles really clearly. French people fear potential failure. They need to understand the reasons of the change before accepting it. Some advices to ease a change situation within the French culture. Use an inductive approach, go from theory to action, explain the vision and philosophy, use and respect the legislation, cooperate with trade unions, lead as an example.
Anglo-Saxons, they will like to work in processes. They will develop a project step by step. A more Latin group, let's say French, will work differently. Everybody will want to be at the same level of information at any time. Everybody will want to argue on any decision to be taken. But then when a decision is taken, it's more collective and probably more accepted by everybody.
Now looking at the US. The main characteristics of the American culture is that they confront problems quickly and directly. They're really autonomous and value leadership. Towards change, Americans are practice and action oriented. They think short term and are not reluctant to change. Some advices for successful change within the American culture. So change should be related to well understood self-interest, emphasis on individual accountability, make clear who's accountable for what and when, communicate the change as a challenge, use rewards and promotions.
In terms of Americans and how they view change, change is an imperative, and change is normal. If you don't change, then you're going to get left behind. I think change is normal, and that's what's made America, America. And I think that's why there's such a strong entrepreneurial spirit in America.
In the US, competency is the only way to gain respect, and it's true that it is a very brutal shock. Financial crisis has been brutally perceived, and we had to do a quickly layoff plan. We had to lay off a first time over 800 people. These are tough decisions to take, especially in a context when you're French and not necessarily well received. In 3 months, we had cut off jobs, etc. The rapidity with which we implemented the change usually scared French people who are not used to such a quick, radical decision and implementation.
Looking at China. In the Chinese culture, there's a great respect for hierarchy and tradition. Chinese have a lot of trouble accepting critics and failure, and as such, are reluctant to change. They act as a whole for the interest of the company, respect structure and hierarchy. Some advices for change management when working with Chinese. Use a top-down design. Value consensus. External consultants are not well perceived. Use a directive approach over rules and regulations. Power comes with seniority. And be subtle in your critics.
We are indeed in an extremely diversified world. The difficulties of unifying the Asian world are multiple, and there are very strong cultural differences between these countries.
My culture is very highly risk averse. When it comes to a change, if the leaders say they should do so, they will follow their leaders.
Looking at Japan. Japanese don't like to show their emotions. They value seniority, respect rules and structure. They value tradition and respect the old orders. As a result, they are highly opposed to change. Some advice about change management. They respect seniority and tradition, so make small steps when it comes to change. Focus on processes and structure. Be careful listener. Create curiosity instead of uncertainty.
Des Japonais pour qui tout est en subtilité.
Japanese are really subtle people. There is a lot of unsaid. They never lose face. They don't interrupt each other. They avoid issues. They avoid answering directly. All these things are very complicated, especially when there is a number of difficulties to deal with. Bosses are older. There is not young people with high responsibilities. Only age and maturity gives you respect. Obviously, experience is very important, but it's very different from what we are used to in Europe and even more in the US.
Sur le continent européen et encore plus par rapport aux États-Unis.